AP stands for address problem. Right? Now, see, there you go. Isn't that something? AP stands for address problem. But we reiterated this before. When you respond to any kind of essay question, the fundamentally most important thing that you have to do, is understand what the question is asking you to do. Now, the only way to understand what the question is asking you to do is to read it carefully. Now, most of the time, if you go to 2, it says identify the task, right? Most of the time, that involves underlying or identifying what you consider to be key words, right? What are the key words in this question? What are the marching orders? What are the things that this question is asking you to do? Now, if you look at the packets that I gave you, in some of those cases, the students that responded in those at that time underlined, pass the spectrum ones, underlined some key words. What were they? So now, we're saying the first step in responding to this document-based essay question that you are going to do tomorrow is to try to figure out exactly what the question is asking you to do. And in order to do that, you have to identify keywords. Keywords that require action on your part, keywords that establish parameters, keywords that are crucial to sort of understanding the question. And then there is this suggestion that you should identify those keywords to draw your focus to. Underline them, circle them, star them, do something. And so you can see that the kids that responded in 1998 to this question did just that. They underlined or identified keywords, and you can see them on your paper. So tell me something. Raise your hand. Some of you have them on your paper. Here's how you do it. You raise your hand, and then you say something. I say, okay, what did they write? What did they underline? Go ahead.
To what extent?
Oh, to what extent? Now, I would argue that that's a crucial kind of thing. Because what you're going to do in this question is measure the extent of something. Right? What is it the extent of? So you're going to measure the extent of something. What would I don't know if anybody circled this on their paper, but if we measure the extent of something, what is it the extent of? Look down on it. What is it the extent of? Tell me, look at it, yes.
The characterization.
The characterization. The extent to which the characterization is what? Say it. Say it. Accurate. The extent to which some characterization is accurate is what you're going to judge on this question. What is the characterization? Now, read it to me. Look down there, Belay, read it to me. You're on the edge of being a super genius. Go ahead, say it. What is the characterization? Read it. Well, okay, what about, read the actual question about the two parties. There is a characterization. With respect to the federal Constitution, read it.
Jeffersonian Republicans are usually characterized.
Okay, so it's a characterization, right? So the Jeffersonian Republicans are usually characterized. Obviously, that would be part of the characterization as what, Belay? Read it.
A strict constructionist who are opposed to the broad constructionism of the Federalists.
So then, the Jeffersonian Republicans are characterized as strict constructionists. The Federalists are characterized as what? Say it. Loose or broad constructionists. Right? So the characterization is that the Republicans are characterized as strict constructionists. The Federalists are characterized as broad constructionists. Right? Now, what do you have to do with that characterization? Say it again, Annie. What do you have to do with that characterization? That's the characterization. Republicans are strict constructionists. Federalists are broad constructionists. If you are watching this in the comfort of your home, if you are a student in this class and watching in the comfort of your home, you should have this thing out. Now, you don't have it at home in this form, but you have it in paper form. So you should have this out, you should have this out, and the 5 steps out. Now we're back to Annie, right? And what are we going to do with that characterization? To what extent it's accurate? In what time frame? In what time frame? Go there, Isabella. In what time frame? So how accurate is the characterization that the Republicans were strict constructionists and the Federalists were broad constructionists in that time period? That's what we've got to do, right? Oh my goodness, we don't know what strict construction and broad construction means, do we? Or do we? What does that mean? In regard to the Constitution, is that what it says? In regard to the Constitution, the Republicans were strict constructionists. What does that mean? How the Constitution was interpreted. Strict construction meant what? Say it. So the strict interpretation of the Constitution suggests that everything that's in the Constitution should be interpreted literally and not extended. Right? What it says, Congress can do, the President can do, the courts can do. Beyond that, they cannot do. Right? So the strict interpretation of the Constitution limits the power of the national government created by the Constitution to what is specifically articulated as those powers. How about the broad interpretation? Ben, the broad interpretation of the Constitution says what to do?
You can stretch what the Constitution says.
So that the powers that are assigned in the Constitution to the federal government can be broadened based on what? The broad interpretation of the Constitution is based on one clause, worms.
The elastic clause?
The elastic clause. The elastic clause of the Constitution gives Congress the authority to do what is necessary and proper to sort of fulfill their enumerated duties. And so the broad interpretation of the Constitution suggests that there are lots of things that are necessary and proper. The strict interpretation of the Constitution suggests that what the Constitution says is what Congress and the national government can do. Right? The Jeffersonians interpreted it strictly. The Hamiltonians or the Federalists interpreted it broadly is the characterization. How accurate is that characterization during that time period is the question. Correct? Now we've got that. We've got that. We followed that. Now what I'm saying to you is you have to do this tomorrow. You have to discern what the question is asking. If you don't, and you don't really fully understand what the question is asking, then you're kind of lost. So it's worth the time to think about it. I mean, I know we kind of went through it laboriously here, but it's worth the time to think about it. And you can see when you look down at those papers that those kids that took those underlined things, they circled things, they identified things. Now, once you figure out what the question is asking you to do, the next thing you should do is brainstorm what you know about that area, time, people. We got to come up with 5 things. I know no one in here likes to actually respond to questions. I know that something bad will happen to you if you respond to questions. But we got to come up with 5 things. Don't look at the documents. And this is what I would recommend. Before you actually even look at the documents, discern what the question is asking you. And then brainstorm what you know about that question that you think might be relevant. What are 5 things that might be relevant? People, events, legislation, actions. Yes, Billy, I'm so happy you were responding, I can't stand it. Go ahead, Billy. Louisiana Purchase. Yes, go ahead, Tricia. The debate over the National Bank. You're going to say Louisiana Purchase. All right, so we've got 2. We need 3 more. Debate over the National Bank happened, certainly ongoing in that time. So did the Louisiana Purchase. What else happened that might be relevant to this strict versus broad interpretation of the Constitution? Go ahead. The War of 1812. Great. What else? Yes? Pardon me? Okay, the balance of power between branches, battle between Congress and the presidency. Yeah, maybe. What else? What else? Any specific names? Any names of people that might be relevant to this? Say it. Go ahead. Hamilton. Yeah, he's still alive, right? He's still alive until 1804. Yes.
Jefferson.
Jefferson, certainly. He's in there. Go ahead. Anything else? Any other names? Yes. Well, Madison's on there too. Yes. Marshall, certainly. Right? Marbury versus Madison might be relevant to this. Okay, so now we've generated in our mind, and you may see things written there next to the question. They may have done that. Did anybody write, any of the students that you have, write anything next to the question, like a name or something that indicates that they were kind of brainstorming? Anybody else? Say it if you think they did. Yes.
You wrote TJ and then a line like strict, and then from
Okay, so TJ and strict. All right, yes. Monroe and Jefferson. Okay, go ahead.
He said Republicans, agrarian, and states' rights.
Okay, so then they're trying to sort of fully comprehend, what the strict interpretation entailed. Okay, now after you kind of brainstorm what you know, and after you determine what the question is asking you to do, a lot of AP teachers recommend that you formulate in your mind what you're going to say. what's my response? What's my thesis? And your thesis possibilities here are kind of, well, the characterization is not very accurate for the Jeffersonians, and it's accurate for the Federalists. The characterization is not accurate for either. The characterization is accurate. The characterization is accurate to an extent, to a limited extent, to a great extent. So you've got a lot of range of possibilities. But what I would suggest, and I think this is good advice, is before you read the documents, come up with what you think you want to say. What do I want to say? You know, what do I think about this? What's going to be my... maybe you don't need to write your thesis. In fact, I wouldn't write it. I would think about what I think generally my position is going to be. And then after I've considered what I think my position is going to be, then, in your mind you're thinking, okay, I think that, the Jeffersonians, this characterization may not be accurate, or largely accurate for the Jeffersonians. Okay, that's what I'm going to say. And I might say, I think it's more accurate for the Federalists. Okay, that's what I've got in my mind. Now I read the documents, and when I read the documents, what in those documents kind of confirms that, or supports that, what I think? Because that's what I want to incorporate. I want to support what I'm going to say based on the documents. Let's just look at 4 documents really quickly. Let's just look. And if you are at home watching this, you have those 4 documents. I distributed those 4 documents, or will have distributed those 4 documents to the 3rd period class. You should have them in a photocopied form, not in the screen form, but it's photocopied. All right, let's look at document A. First of all, if we had time, there's an elaborate kind of discussion about how you analyze documents. So we've talked a little bit about that. You should be looking at the author, you should be looking at the intent, you should be looking at who the author, or what it is the source is, what they're attempting to do, who they're writing to, all of these things. But one thing that's really important in looking at a historical document is the date. Now, let's look at this. Thomas Jefferson is the author of this document. It says source, Thomas Jefferson to Gideon Granger. It is document A for those at home that are watching. A future member of Jefferson's cabinet. So this guy is going to be partners with Jefferson when he is elected to the presidency, or if he is elected to the presidency. Look at the date. The date is August 1800. When is the election for president, typically? What month? November, right? November, you're familiar with it. November, right, is when the election for the president is. So August is before November. So is Jefferson the president when he wrote this document? No. He's not the president, but he wants to be the president. Incidentally, what was he when he wrote this document? If he is not the president, yes. No, he's not Secretary of State, yes.
He was the Vice President.
He was Vice President. Remember, he was Secretary of State under Washington. Under Adams, Jefferson was the Vice President, right? Which is odd, because they were rivals, right? So Jefferson is the Vice President. He is seeking the presidency. He is writing to someone who he's expecting to be part of the administration that he established. So what does he say? I believe we shall obtain a majority of the legislature of the United States attached to the preservation of the federal Constitution, according to its obvious principles, and those on which it was known to be received, attached equally to the preservation to the states of those rights unquestionably remaining with them. In short, a majority firm in all those principles which we have expounded and the Federalists have opposed uniformly. It, our country, can never be harmonious and solid while so respectable a portion of its citizens support the principles which go directly to a change of the federal constitutions, to sink the states' governments, to consolidate them into one, and to monarchize them. Our country, listen to this, our country is too large to have all of its affairs directed by a single government. Isn't that fascinating? Donnelly, you are interested in current events. Isn't that fascinating? Here's Jefferson in 1800 saying our country is too big to be governed by one national government. That's in 1800, when the country wasn't that big, right? What would he think today? The true theory of our Constitution is surely the wisest and the best, that the states are independent as to everything within themselves, and united as to everything respecting foreign nations. Based just on this document, if you think about it, based just on